So we're going to talk about the big screen version of Krampus. So we've seen a few straight-to-kind of video Krampus movies recently. This one's hit in the cinemas. This one is directed by Michael Dougherty, who directed and wrote Trick or Treat, stars Toni Collette and Adam Scott, and they're basically this kind of family that are having this kind of regular family to get together. A lot of the family don't get along, and their young son basically is kind of having a bit of a hard time of it, and he has kind of like given up on the Christmas spirit. This inadvertently basically brings Krampus, who is essentially the kind of the anti-Santa Claus, and his minions to kind of terrorise this family in their kind of small town. Basically, they're cut off by a large blizzard, and they essentially lay siege to his home. So I'm going to do something that I don't normally do in these reviews. I'm actually going to kind of address some of the points made by other reviewers, especially on YouTube. So I think this film actually works on levels that maybe people are missing. For example, the beginning of the film, the openings, they basically have a kind of a Black Friday sort of scene where people are just going crazy. And, you know, it's basically sort of telling us that the kind of the Christmas spirit is kind of going, it's kind of turning in this kind of commercial juggernaut, and people are just sort of like, you know, missing the point, so to speak, of Christmas. And it's showing you this on things like we have Black Friday. So it's a good, like, real life example of that. Now, one of the interesting things I felt this played out as well, it's kind of, it starts off like a comedy. It very much reminded me of Christmas Vacation. This kind of family have their extended family turn up, and they're kind of aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff, and they are kind of very much the comedic relief. And I have to say, one of the criticisms that I've seen from other reviewers that they're kind of they're unlikable. I actually disagree. I actually think they were a little bit more layered than I was expecting. They're obviously played to be a bunch of dicks, a lot of them, but they do have a kind of good side to them as well, and I think you do see that. So I feel that was an unfair criticism of some of the other kind of the reviews that I've seen. There's obviously the kind of our central family are a bit more kind of like good-hearted necessarily, but the extended family, I would say, they're certainly more dickish, but they're still sort of good people. They're just different from the kind of your traditional kind of good people, so to speak. Anyway, and a couple of other good things. I thought the creature designs were all fantastic here. Like I said, the twisted version of the kind of the typical kind of sort of Christmas trappings that we'll kind of see. I won't go too much into it, but if I suffice to say, expect to see kind of lots of traditional Christmas things warped into a evil and ugly way. So I kind of liked it. There's a lot of practical effects. There's a little bit of CGI, but considering what they CGI'd, I thought it, you know, there's no way around it, to be honest with you. So I thought it was acceptable. I kind of like the tone here. It was a kind of a fun movie, but there is still quite a lot of violence in it. It does go quite dark in places. In fact, I would say there was a point in this film where I thought, man, this film, it could actually, if it's got the balls, it could be really dark. It doesn't quite go there. Towards the end of the film, I thought, hey, man, if this ends at a particular point, it's going to be really dark. But it doesn't quite go that far. But you know, you think it might do for a certain time. I actually quite liked the family to be honest. I thought some of the humour was very good. They do seem like a kind of a genuine family to me. I mean, even though they're kind of, there's people who don't necessarily get on, you do feel that there is this kind of there's still a bond with them, which I kind of liked. So I think when other reviewers kind of look at this family, I feel they're kind of missing some of the subtle elements where you feel these people don't necessarily get on, but they are still family. When push comes to shove, they are there for each other. So I kind of liked Krampus himself. Another criticism I would say that I would address is that you don't see Krampus until right at the end. That's true of a lot of horror films, to be honest with you. I didn't feel this one as any more or less than other typical sort of horror films. Maybe if you don't watch a lot of horror films, you may be kind of like thinking, I mean, I guess maybe because the film called Krampus, you'd expect to be in more, but to me, he was in it a kind of an amount that you would see from pretty much any horror film that has a kind of monster that you kind of see. Then you do sort of see him pop up here and there throughout the movie, but you don't really get a good look at him until the end. And when you do see him, I thought the design was fantastic. We've seen kind of some of the other kind of like versions of Krampus on these kind of straight to video ones. This one I think was certainly the most harrowing looking, and I like the designs from the other creatures as well. Some of the things I felt didn't work, I felt, like I said, there is a fair amount of kills here, and I was kind of surprised that they went to some lengths, some of them. But when especially when some of the children end up getting killed, I felt the reactions from some of the family members was a little bit too muted. I have to be honest with you. You would have been a little bit more distraught about it than they seem to be. So there is that. The ending for me, I have mixed feelings about, if I'm honest. It's one of these things that has multiple endings, and there's a point where I felt if it ended here, man, that would be a powerful film, but dark. And it has a couple more endings, one of which I felt, man, this is really unsatisfying if you can kind of take it this level, and then it kind of does something else as well. I felt maybe some people may feel the ending was a little bit sort of unsatisfactory. And a minor thing, although I really like the kind of the Krampus monster, this is very mild spoiler, they kind of make it so his mouth doesn't move, and he's kind of roaring and stuff, and sort of speaking, and they should have animated his mouth somehow. It's kind of constantly open, and that was a little bit of a bugbear for me. I know it's only a small thing, but I guess because it's a practical effect, they should have made it move around a little bit. I just thought that kind of bothered me a little bit. I went with someone who was not a big horror fan, to be honest with you, and their main concern was like I said, the family members that thought they weren't kind of like the loss wasn't addressed as much, and kind of it fell into some cliches in regards to you have the fat kid, you have the kind of the obnoxious uncle, things like that. The guy who plays the obnoxious uncle always plays these kind of roles, I've got to say, but I still kind of quite liked it, to be honest with you. But overall, I thought this was a real fun film. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a throwback to the kind of the horror films of, I would say, the kind of the late 80s and early 90s. It's definitely kind of got that feel to it, but it's a very Christmassy. It's definitely a good Christmas watch, I would say, and it has a good amount of fun in it. Like I said, that's my assessment of this film. I felt some of the criticisms I've heard are maybe a little bit unfair, and I think this film, people are, there's some subtle things that I feel people have missed. The family engagement, and also the kind of the bit of a look at kind of the modern commercialism and basically how that is basically essentially taken over the real Christmas spirit, stuff like that. On a personal note, you had this kind of like the German grandmother, who I kind of like, because my grandmother was German, so it kind of took me home a little bit, so I kind of like that. I really enjoyed this movie. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.